Hello and welcome to episode of the Bubbs on Sports podcast. Today is Tuesday, November 7th. Hope everyone's having a good day so far and had a good rest of their day yesterday. We've got a lot to get into today on a Tuesday podcast as we come off of a brutal New York Jets loss last night as they lose 27-6 against the Los Angeles Chargers. Yesterday I did a podcast. I was all fired up. I was all pumped up for the game. Jet fans, as expected in the stadium that were there, were fired up. Defense comes out of the gate strong, 3-and-out early on. And man, oh man, does this offense stink. Brutal, embarrassing, pathetic, painful, whatever words you want to use to describe last night's performance. I would say those probably fit in pretty well to the New York Jets and their offensive struggles last night. And if we're being honest, their offensive struggles that have plagued them all season long. And it was only a matter of time until a game like last night actually happened where the New York Jets offense doesn't play well and they somehow don't get saved by some crazy missed kick by Graham Gano or something like that, or a turnover by the defense. And this has been something that's been going on forever, for this entire season. The New York Jets offense, the New York Jets have been winning in spite of Zach Wilson, in spite of their offense. They've been winning because of their defense, and they've been winning because of turnovers, and they've been winning by some great special teams, which last night, the punt return was not good. Not every single game is the defense special teams going to dominate. Now, the defense was good last night, but the special teams allowed the punt return. And then you look at the offense, and they score 6 points. And it's time for Zach Wilson to be benched. Enough is enough. So we'll break it all down today. This is primarily what I'll get into. We'll also get into some other things later on as we get you set up for the night in sports tonight here on a Tuesday, November 7th program. But the New York Jets now fall to 4-4. The Chargers improved to 4-4. They lose 27-6 on prime time Monday Night Football. And their offense was pathetic, as I mentioned yet again. The Chargers defense last night went into the game 297.4 yards was the amount of yards they were allowing per game through the air. That was dead last in the NFL. They've got one of the worst defenses when it comes to stopping the pass in football. When you look at even their quarterback rating against, it's one of the worst in football. And what do the New York Jets do? What does Zach Wilson do? They go out there, they embarrass themselves again, and here we are. They lose a big game on Monday night, and you even have more questions now about the offensive coordinator, about Zach Wilson, about this offensive line, about this receiving core. Outside of Garrett Wilson, who I know had a fumble, but outside of him, there is nobody in this receiving core that you can trust right now. And you got to give some blame on Joe Douglas for that. He had the trade deadline last Tuesday. A week from today was the NFL trade deadline, or a week ago today. The New York Jets did not make a single move. There was guys out there. There was quarterbacks out there that the New York Jets could have brought in for a day 3 pick. They didn't. Okay. There was receivers out there that the New York Jets brought in that they didn't. There was offensive linemen out there that the New York Jets could have brought in. They didn't. This loss is on a lot of people. Zach Wilson was a big problem, but it was on a lot of guys. It was on a lot of people. It starts with Joe Douglas too. The offensive line's an issue. He hasn't done a ton to improve this offensive line while it's been struggling. He did not make a single move to bring in a receiver. As much as Douglas deserves a lot of credit, you got to give him some criticism here. So Zach Wilson last night, 33 of 49, 263 yards. If you're somebody that's looking at that box score saying, oh, looks good, looked like he played well, you didn't watch the game. Go back and watch the game. I wouldn't recommend watching the game because it was ugly. But go back and watch the game and you'll get the true story of what Zach Wilson did last night, which was beyond pathetic. All he does is check the ball down, check down, check down, check down. Even on play action, somehow they find a way to check it down. They're like scared. He's scared, and Hackett's scared to throw the ball more than 15 yards, more than 20 yards. It's run, check down, punt. Run, check down, punt. They can't score touchdowns. You cannot be successful in the National Football League if you don't have an offense competent enough to score touchdowns. They cannot score. They can't score. You can't win that way. He can't read a defense. I thought there was moments last night where he was under a lot of pressure. Some of them, he got sacked 8 times. Some of them I thought was the offensive line. Some of them he held on to the ball forever. He had the 2 fumbles. I thought Billy Turner had a night to forget. I mean, were we really surprised? Why the heck is Billy Turner at right tackle anyway? Why are we putting Mitchell into a secondary position at guard when you're going up against Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack? They ate Billy Turner alive last night. Bosa and Khalil Mack, Thanksgiving came early last night for them. They were feasting on Zach Wilson all night long. They got to get that figured out because who in the world is going to block Max Crosby next week? Who you can make the argument is better than Bosa and Khalil Mack. Max Crosby's a top 5, top 3 elite pass rusher in the NFL. Who's going to stop him? Nobody. But again, back to Zach. Like, I don't want to beat the dead horse, but you got to bench him. You have to bench him. You cannot continue to roll him out there. This is insanity. It's insanity. Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. That's what the Jets are doing. They're rolling a bad quarterback out there every single week and hoping that something clicks when you just know it's not going to click. Admit you were wrong. He's not good. He is a bust. Move on and start Trevor Siemian against the Raiders. And I've got questions about that too. They went in and signed Trevor Siemian. Why is he even on this team if he's not going to be active at least as a backup on game day? No offense to Tim Boyle, but he's not any good either. Why is he the second quarterback and Trevor Siemian's just a practice squad guy? What's the point in signing Trevor Siemian then if we're not even going to play him? Or he's not even going to be on the active roster come Sunday? What's the point? That was brutal. So, again, can't read a defense. You know, there was a sequence of plays last night where, and no doubt about it, look, Lazard was terrible last night. Lazard was terrible. And I'm starting to get tired of Lazard. He stinks. He stinks. Lazard is awful. 5 drops last night, 3 penalties or something along those lines. I got my notes here that I ripped up last night during my Jets podcast in rage. So I'll try and go back to them here and find some other things to add on to this. Again, you know, this season the Jets are averaging 14.4 points per game. We're entering week 10 of the NFL season. The New York Jets have scored 8 touchdowns. They've scored 8 touchdowns. Or 7 or 8 touchdowns. Whatever it's been. And again, one of the touchdowns you got to go back to. It's crazy. We can count the Jets' touchdowns this year on our fingers. On our fingers, we can count how many touchdowns the Jets have scored this season. I mean, are you kidding me? And you're going to just do the same thing next week. But, you know, Lazard was horrible, as I mentioned. They've had 14.4 points per game. I think some of these Hackett play calls are terrible. I'll have to be honest with you. This is like Adam Gase bad. And this offense is historically terrible. And I feel for the defense. I really do. Because this defense goes out there and fights their tails off every single week and dominates and dominates. And you look at this game, and again, if you're somebody that didn't watch the game, then you can't really speak on it because you have no clue what you saw. The reality is, you might look at this game and say, oh man, the Jets defense almost let up 30 points. That's simply not true. You had the punt return was one. That's not the defense. That's special teams. And then Zach Wilson fumbled, and the Chargers picked it up and took it to like the 1, and they ended up punching it in. So technically right there, that's 14 points the Jets gave the Chargers. So in reality, the Jets defense gave the Chargers about 13 points. They allowed 13 points. And they found a way to lose. Because the offense sucks. Zach Wilson sucks. Nathaniel Hackett stinks. This receiving corps sucks. Everything about this offense, outside of Garrett Wilson again with the receiving corps, is terrible. Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall are the only 2 things we got going for us. And I'll be honest, I'm sick of the first down runs. First down run, check down, 3rd down and 7, it's not going in. You know the drive's over. But back to the sequence I wanted to go do a little bit earlier on. the Jets were driving. I think it was before the half. It was either before the half or I think after halftime. They were driving. They were moving the football. Things were looking good. And there was that one play where they were on the 25-yard line or whatever it was. And there was a guy open. Garrett Wilson was open. Zach didn't see him, which, is, I guess, fine. It's not the end of the world. You got to see him. The safety, there was safety help over the top. He didn't bite on Wilson. Wilson was open. Either way, you got to get the ball to him either way. But either way, he doesn't get the ball to Zach. Zach doesn't get the ball to Garrett Wilson there. There was 10, 15 yards of space in front of Zach Wilson. I think it was a 2nd and 8, I want to say. He could have probably picked it up with his legs. Because I think it was probably a first down run by the Jets that went for a good old 2 yards. But there was that play there. Zach had 10, 15 yards of space in front of him. And instead of what he's doing, and this is simply all Zach Wilson here. This is Zach. This isn't coaching. This isn't, because everybody's been telling him to do this. Run the ball. Use your legs. We've said this over and over again about Zach Wilson. The one thing he does well is he's mobile and he's athletic. So one thing he does well. Can't read a defense. He's got a good arm, but they don't use it. Can't complete the short passes. Has no pocket presence. Footwork stinks. Football IQ low. All that stuff. I mean, he's not a good quarterback. But the one thing he can do well is run. There was 10 to 12 yards of green grass or green turf, whatever the heck you want to call it, in front of him. And instead of what he does, he pitches the ball, a panic pitch, to Michael Carter. And he drops it. I believe he dropped it. 3rd down and 8. Okay, fine. Bad play, 3rd down and 8. That was pathetic. He's got to run. You got green. It's year number 3. And it's the same mistakes we're seeing in year number 1. You got to run the ball there. You don't have to be a great quarterback to know that. That's common football IQ. If I could sit on my couch at home and yell, run, 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 then you should be able to too, and you're actually playing. 3rd down and 8, Zach takes a terrible sack. That is something else I cannot take anymore. I am so sick of these 3rd down sacks. We got to stop taking 3rd down sacks. And the reality is he's regressing. He's starting to go back to his old ways where he gets pressure, he starts to run backwards, starts to do these stupid spins, panics, takes a sack. So I cannot stand it. It's enough of these 3rd down sacks. Why are we taking 3rd down sacks like that? 3rd down's brutal. I mean, the drive's over. The drive's over when the Jets get the 3rd down. They were 3 of 17, I think, again last night. 3 of 17 last night on 3rd down. They went 3 of 4 on 4th down. A lot of it was garbage time. They did have the one nice 4th down play, I thought. The Breece Hall out of the Wildcat, I did not expect Nathaniel Hackett to do that. I was pleasantly surprised with that play call. I thought it was interesting. But what I will, try to keep the defense. Either way, it doesn't matter. But that was one of however many plays the Jets ran, and they couldn't score. But one other thing I want to get to as well is, and this is Hackett. This isn't Zach. This is Hackett. But a lot of it's Zach. But this is when it comes down to coaching. How many more 3rd down empty backfields are we going to do on 3rd and short situations where you're putting no tight end help on Billy Turner or whatever, and you're just letting Bosa just going to burn right by him and sack him? So again, as much as there was some bad sacks that Zach took last night, I'm not denying that. There was a lot of sacks that Zach took that he had no time. And again, Zach is, I think, he's a big reason they lost. Is he the only reason? No. There was a lot of other issues with this team. The offensive line wasn't good. The receivers weren't good. Not denying that. It starts with the quarterback ultimately. But there also is other issues. No doubt about that. And that's coaching. I don't know why they're running empty backfield with no help, not a running backfield to help the blocking a little bit, give them a little bit more time on these 3rd and short situations. Why are we not, what are we doing? And in the one time, instead of putting tight end help, they just let Ruckert, I believe, just straight up try and block Joey Bosa. That ended well. That ended really well. I believe that was the drive coming out of halftime where if there was a time for the New York Jets to switch the momentum of that game, it was that drive. They get in the red zone, and what do? They miss it. They don't score. You have a penalty, I believe. There was a penalty. These pre-snap penalties have got to end. They've got to end. Rucker last night had 2. Lazard had a legal formation. Anytime there was any, like the Jets offense is not good enough to take these penalties and overcome them. They're just not. They barely can win with they barely can win with not being penalized much. But 8 penalties for 40 yards, that's coaching. A lot of that's coaching. Undisciplined football. It's undisciplined. So it's the pre-snap garbage. Like, how are we messing this up? And it's week 9 and year number 3. How are we doing this? This is literally it's last year all over again. Great defense. Offense is the worst in football. Offense might be the worst of all time. Same thing as last year. And it's only a matter of time until this locker room starts to turn on Zach again. And with that, they'll start to turn on the coaches. And that's a bad thing. That's when you're entering bumpy territory if you're Robert Saleh. Because it's one thing for this to happen last year. But for this same thing to happen 2 years in a row, there's going to be some serious questions held with this coaching staff if this continues to happen. And I'm not blaming the game on Robert Saleh. By no means. I'm just saying, if there isn't a change made at quarterback, these players, the locker room's going to become divided. You heard about it early in the season. Going to that Chiefs game, you heard how the locker room was starting to become divided. They don't believe in Zach. You heard those reports. And then Zach went out there and played well. And it was like, okay, bought him a couple weeks of time. And then they beat Denver. And oh man, they beat the Eagles. And then they somehow beat the Giants. So they required a miracle, which is another reason to show how bad this offense is. It took a 24-second miracle for them to beat a team that had a quarterback that wasn't competent enough to throw a pass the line of scrimmage in Tommy DeVito. They had -9 passing yards, and it took a miracle to beat them. But okay, all right, you get another week, you get an extra day, Monday Night Football, reset, bad pass defense, let's see what you can do. You lay a dud. Now you're entering dangerous territory again. Because now you're 4-4, playoffs, you had an opportunity to become a half game out of the AFC with everything going your way on Sunday. Bills losing, Dolphins losing. Now you're back to square one a little bit. Zach's regressing, your offense stinks, you're back to 500, playoffs look a little more bleak. I think they went from being 8 to 7 to now back down to 11. This is where you enter scary territory if you're the coaching staff. Because if you keep rolling them out there and all of a sudden you stare up and you're 4-6 going to that Black Friday game against Miami, it's going to be bad. Really bad. Bench Zach Wilson. Bench him. I'm not saying that Trevor Siemian is going to go out there and throw for 300 yards and light it up like Mike White did for a couple weeks. Not saying that. But he can't be worse than Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson is the worst quarterback in football. Just tell it like it is. And if you're a Zach truther that wants Zach Wilson support, this isn't the channel for you. I'm sorry. I don't know how you can walk out of the game yesterday and, think that Zach Wilson's still the answer. Look, we all root for him. We all want him to do well. We all do. Because we want the team to win. But as a fan, you got to recognize, too, when there's good guys and there's not. Zach Wilson's not a good quarterback. But Trevor Siemian can't be much worse. He can't be much worse. So throw him out there. See what he can do. Give him an opportunity. If he's somehow worse than Zach Wilson, and that means he's the worst quarterback in football. They've got the worst offense in football right now. They do. So can it get any worse with somebody else? And again, to show you that it's a lot of like Zach is, you go around the NFL and you see Josh Dobbs, who didn't practice a single day with Minnesota, goes into that game, wins a game on the road. Tyson Bagent of the Bears. The Bears stink. They have nobody around him. Guy that was playing D2. A guy that was getting ready to figure out his life and go get a job because he think football he thought was over for him. Can complete passes and could go out there and actually score touchdowns. Tyson Bagent. Hey, we're not talking about Joe Montana or Tom Brady. We're talking about Tyson Bagent right now. He can do better than Zach Wilson. Look around. Look around the league. It's time for a change. You can make the argument that change should have happened after that Patriot game. You can make an argument that change should have happened when Aaron Rodgers went down. They should have traded for somebody, and there should be somebody else at quarterback the rest of the way and just let Zach sit. And that's another reality, too, is that's where it does fall on Douglas, is this was supposed to be a year for Zach Wilson to sit back and watch. I'm not sitting. Look, I don't really know if even if he would have sat back and watched, if he would have magically came out next year and play well, whatever. But this was a year for him to sit back and watch. This Jet team, this Jet front office should have went out and traded for a quarterback, and still had Zach Wilson sit back and watch, but they didn't. I just don't think they will. I don't think they'll. Like one other thing too, I want to get to. They talk about his confidence, how, they don't want to hurt his confidence, right? Benching him. What is Zach's confidence level right now? You can't tell me his confidence is high. He just got embarrassed on primetime football. I mean, I don't know how many boos. I'm sure there was boos last night. I don't know if I quite heard him at the fourth quarter. I was so frustrated, and I was so, like, in my own zone when they were in the fourth quarter where I was just fed up. So there was part of me that kind of zoned out from the broadcast where I was just kind of watching the game, just staring into the television, not moving because I was so disappointed. But there had to be boos. So you're telling me another one of these games where prime time doesn't play well, all this stuff. You're telling me his confidence is high right now? Really? So it's time. It's time to move on. It's time to restart. I think it might be beneficial for both sides, too, for Zach to move on. And look, this is going into the offseason, but to move on and go somewhere else might be beneficial. It just didn't work out. I think the best thing Zach Wilson probably is a glorified backup. It's probably what he is. So, and you go to the defense. Look, the defense was great. Jermaine Johnson, Bryce Huff are phenomenal. You look at the highest graded Jets last night, DJ Reed, Sauce, Bryce Huff, CJ Mosley, Quinnen Williams, all on the defense. Sauce Gardner's so good. He is phenomenal. What a day for him yesterday. I think that might have been one of his better games that he's had in his career. He was all over the field. He was making an impact everywhere. There was 3-4 passes that he at least broke up or, made a big impact to break up. A couple nice tackles. He was phenomenal. Sauce was great. So, disappointing. But Jets lose. Got some other sports on tonight. Rangers will face the Red Wings tonight. Nets lost last night. You got the Mets hiring Mendoza, which I don't love the hire, I'll be honest. Not a big fan of the hire. But, again, we'll kind of see how it all plays out. The Boone coaching tree worries me a little bit for, a couple of those reasons. Definitely worries me. But tough spot to be in for the Jets. And anyway, that'll do it. I'll be back here Thursday, Friday with some podcasts. I also might have a live stream coming up here over the next couple days, talking some Jets, figuring out what the heck they'll do. Saleh will speak today. If there is anything that is worth noting from his press conference, like somehow if the Jets do bench Zach Wilson, I'll have a podcast up on that later on. But most likely, I don't think the Jets have what it takes. I don't think the Jets have what it takes to bench Zach Wilson. I just don't think they have it. I think they're too worried about his confidence, although his confidence can't be high to begin with. But we'll see. So, anyway, I'll admit, I didn't fully expect them last year to bench Zach Wilson for Mike White, although in the post-game press conference, Saleh said, we'll see or whatever. So, last night, nobody asked him whether or not they're going to bench him, which I was shocked by the media. Somebody asked if they're going to think about switching the play caller. Robert Saleh said straight up, no. I don't know why they asked that, though. Somebody got to ask about the quarterback. Even if it's the same, oh, no, we're going to roll with Zach, he's our guy, at least ask. So, anyway, that'll do it. More content throughout the week. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching.